Monday, we'll try to next Thursday on it. Just, use the building. I just noticed today for the first time the source of back to its crease. It's all blue.
Sorry about that. No worries.
Good evening and welcome to the May 4th, 2022 BZA meeting. We'll invite the audience to stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance with us.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is attendance. Mr. DeLong, will you be doing that?
Yes, I will. I'm down the roster here. Mr. Jones.
Present.
Ms. Postlethwaite. Mr. Piquel.
Present.
Mr. Lake.
Present.
Mr. Mundy.
Present. The next item is approval of the April 6th, 2022 minutes in the BZA meeting. Are there any questions or corrections? I have one question. It was pointed out that on page 81 that an address about halfway down the page, an address was stated as 11931 East County Road 100 North, Zionsville, and the docket says Sheridan. Has that been corrected?
I will look into that and make that correction. It says Zionsville.
Well, I said Zionsville when I made the motion, and I believe I was reading right off of the motion that we had on the page, that maybe the cover had it listed as Sheridan.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, like the front page of the docket would have had it as Sheridan. That's the only thing I can think of.
I think that's it too.
Okay,
So it probably just needs to be updated to say Sheridan in the minutes.
understood.
Okay. All right. With that correction, is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. Mr. Lake, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jones, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Next items are continuance or withdrawal requests. We do have a formal request for withdrawal, our docket number 2022-10-DSV, A. Worcester. I think you all have a copy of the letter that was written by the petitioner's attorney asking for a withdrawal. We do need to have a motion to withdraw that and vote.
So I move to withdraw docket number 2022-10-DSV 8 Worcester at 9180 East 350 South, Zionsville, Indiana 46077.
Thank you, Mr. Lakes. Or second?
Second.
Second, was that Mr. Piquel?
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor of withdrawal of that petition, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It is withdrawn. Are there any other petitioners here who wish to withdraw or ask for continuance this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to continued business. We have negative findings of fact for petition 2022-13-SE K. Marburger, 11634 East 100 North in Sheridan, Indiana. We will need to sign that negative finding of fact. That was from the April meeting. We also have negative finding of fact for petitions 2022-14-SE and 2022-15-DSV, Blessed Beginnings Broadcasting, Inc. at 6630 South 200 East, Lebanon, Indiana. Those two will need to be signed.
We start here.
While that is coming down, we'll go on to docket number 2022-05-M, J. Davis, 8150 East 550 South, Zionsville, Indiana. Is Mr. Davis here? Virtual? Mr. Davis, are you there?
I am.
Okay, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yep, this is Jay Davis, 8150 East 550 South in Zionsville, attending remotely.
All right, and when we met last month, there were questions about the drainage, and we did receive materials that your engineer had provided. So could you walk through that with us, please?
Sure. Gary Ladd of Ladd Engineering met me on site at the property on April the 15th. And again, reviewed what we had done, and then also took some pictures of the house, and then compared, kind of what we had previously done with the commitment, and also took some calculations again, and I think provided them in his letter to the board, and compared what we had done to the Boone County Drain Manual for a 100-year flood event, and indicated that I guess we met the requirements, or we had adequate drainage for that type of event. And then I had previously, at that time it wasn't done, but I had previously back in February contracted with a company to come out and finish kind of the dry creek bed that we had in the front, where the downspouts in the front actually drain into that dry creek bed, and it went about 100 foot down the yard toward 550 East. We have since completed that work. They finished up last week. And so now that drainage swale for the front downspouts actually runs all the way down to the drainage swale that's along 550 East.
All right, were you able to test that this week?
Yes, this past weekend we did. It worked really well, so it did.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Davis? Did any of our drainage experts check the calculations?
You don't know, none.
Yeah, not my expertise.
Still, I'm waiting for the dry test on the soil samples I took to.
If there are no questions for the petitioner, are there any remonstrators here on this petition? Seeing none, could we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, sir. The staff report was presented last month, so I will again just kind of briefly go over the request. This is a request to modify commitments that were associated with a project back in 2018, docket number 2018-46 DSV, where variance was granted for an adjacent lot not to meet the required acreage of the zoning district. As part of that approval, commitments were placed on this parcel to deal with drainage. And at that time, there was no home designed or proposed for the site. And Ladd Engineering, at the request of the seller, or at that time, the owner of the property, developed a set of calculations or standards that were incorporated into commitments that would be applied to any future building. Mr. Davis and his wife purchased the property, constructed their home, and during the process of that, they became aware that the drainage system that they were installing was not in compliance with commitments that were established. Mr. Davis has since had Ladd Engineering come out, as he stated, to review the work that was done. And Ladd Engineering has issued a letter that is provided as Exhibit 6 in tonight's packet,
stating that what has been installed does meet and serve the intent of the original commitments. Staff is in support of this modification, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions for staff? I assume those calculations are something that an engineer would understand, perhaps.
I would add that Mr. Ladd has stamped the letter with his surveyor stamp to give it some legitimacy.
Thank you. There are no questions for staff. Is there any discussion among the board?
I do have a question for the petitioner. Mr. Davis, since last meeting, basically what you've done is extended that creek bed from up by the house down to the swale. Is that correct?
That is correct. It goes all the way down to the swale and empties into the swale on 550 South.
Okay, so now you have that plus another drainage tile, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Is there a motion for this petition?
I move the docket number 2022-05-M, a petition for modification to the commitments associated with the approval of 2018-46-DSV, instrument number 2019-007109, the development standards variance to permit the establishment of a 1.83 acre lot in the low-density, single-family residential R1 district for the property located at 8150 East 550 County Road South, Zionsville, Indiana, be approved based on the findings of fact and as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Pickell. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The petition is passed. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
I thank the board for your patience.
Next item on the agenda is docket number 2022-19-M, Foresight Properties LLC at Ansley Park. This is 5345 and 5395 South US Highway 421 in Zionsville. It was continued from the April meeting. And Mr. Andreoli, are you representing the petitioner?
I am. Thank you, Mr. President. For the record, Mike Andreoli, 1393 West Oak Street. I represent the Foresight Properties, a developer of essentially the Ansley Park subdivision. As you'll recall, we're seeking a modification of the original condition 3 to the variances that dealt with the elevations. Originally, this started off, to remind the members of the board, as a Fisher Homes production subdivision. Fisher Homes never built a home in the subdivision itself, went away. There's two homes with a building, one home with a building permit now sitting with staff that really doesn't meet the original elevations that Fisher Homes, from a production builder, wanted to build at the site. The developer now is seeking to make this a custom home development and have custom homes there. And obviously we'll need to change condition number 3 because we're no longer building those elevations that were proposed by Fisher Homes. At the last meeting, we had staff had not had a chance to review what we had submitted, and members of the board also had some questions with regard to whether we really had enough meat on the bone for staff to consider this, other than just the conceptual drawings that we have. So what we've done is we've labeled these as conceptual drawings, and then we came up with a whole series of architectural standards, and staff was really wonderful in letting us know the types of things that they wanted to see in order for them to make a meaningful staff report to you. So we took that to heart and tried to put a lot more meat on the bone in terms of the architectural standards for the houses themselves. And so we think we've successfully done that. Staff has also recommended, and I think in this situation is probably a pretty good pretty good idea. That I think as staff report indicates, is developers intent to enforce the design guidelines, which some same as beyond the content within the zoning ordinance, be staff's recommendation approval form from the developer HOA be submitted with new ILP application. I think that's a good idea. We welcome that. We want to make sure that this is a custom home subdivision. If we would happen to sell a lot to an individual, we don't want them coming in with a building permit that does not comply with what we want to see in that subdivision. And in particular, given the fact that we're seeking to modify these the original conditions, we agree that that's a good idea here, and as a condition of your approval, require that. We would have no objection to that whatsoever. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Would that then be the developer that would approve each of those, of those that are submitted?
Yes.
You said the developer, I assume there's no HOA at this point.
The developer is the HOA. There are covenants for this. So if we say the developer / HOA, that should cover it. We will, the developer, in this case, Foresight, is going to hold these homes and sell them based upon the actual house that's going to be built on there. So they're really going to be custom in that regard. They're just not looking to sell the houses and then have somebody else go out and find a builder. Or if they do that, they're going to have to come back in and make sure that the homes meet the types of homes that the developer has proposed to the board. That's why we had some conceptual drawings and substantial architectural standards. So they're going to have to meet these architectural standards. And in general, those conceptual drawings, that was, I think, a suggestion by one of the members of the board. We ought to label these conceptual because these are going to be custom homes. They're not all going to look alike. And quite frankly, it's just the opposite of what we're trying to achieve. We just don't want to have all homes in there look alike. We want to have a truly custom development. So I hope I've answered that question.
Any other questions for the petitioner's representative?
Yeah, I've got one. In your architectural standards, Exhibit A, under garages, it says front load only style garages are not allowed. Split load and carriage style. My question is, I just want to confirm you've got a width of the lots that you'll be able to meet this. I mean, they've actually,
I think that's right. Yeah.
they're not,
I didn't prepare the.
you didn't go out and measure the lots in the
Pardon me?
houses? You did go out and measure the lots in the houses?
Well,
I hope that's not what it means, but
not having them be front load actually
Yeah.
makes the width allowed to be smaller because you're turning the garage
As long
versus
as-
going out long wise.
Yeah, but as long as you don't try to load it from, then you run into an issue with the driveway overhanging.
If you're trying to load it from the essentially side of the house versus the front of the house, you'd have to come in and load from the front. Like drive up to the front door and turn in, make a right-hand turn or
Right.
right-hand turn.
So that allows for a narrower lot.
Correct.
But if they try to do,
They just, yeah, if this is what they're drafting in here, then they have to make sure it complies with the site. So it's,
and that's my question.
Yeah. I mean, they're the ones that drafted it. So
I understand, and not that we do math up here, but I'm doing the math and and the core concern would be that the driveways might overhang the side yard setback.
well, we're not seeking to violate any setbacks. In fact, that was a question that staff had asked us whether or not with regard to the initial proposed standards that we had that were very, very loosely proposed at that point, whether we were going to be seeking setback variances, side yard in particular. We are not going to. We'll make sure that these are designed as such to meet the architectural standards, but also not to have to come in and request additional setbacks from a side yard standpoint. And that's the approach that we essentially took with regard to this.
thank you.
Any other questions? The other question I have, I assume that the other tenants which had been proposed during the initial
Sorry?
platting of this, that is the price point, the square footage, those things have not changed. They would still be within the proposed 3,150 to 5,000 square feet
Yes,
home, and
Yes.
none of those have changed.
that's right.
Thank you.
That's right.
Is there anyone here who would like to speak for or against this petition? Seeing none, could we have the staff report, please?
Yes, we're usually really good about summarizing, follow up from last time. Staff was requesting from the last meeting to have time to review design standards that were provided. I think the side setbacks were contradicting, so they strike that from that development standard and will comply with the RSF2 side setbacks. And then came up with the idea that the developer would sign a form stating that they're meeting those standards, and that would be submitted with the initial building permit for the residents. Those two items address staff is in favor of this request and happy to answer.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
I have one. We are allowing them to move away from the Fisher Homes models. Yet number 3 on your suggested approval talks about that they match the March 28th, 2017. Is that just previous history? That we're not asking them to continue to match that, are we? Okay. Okay. That's what I thought. That's why I was making sure that was the historical reference. Okay.
Any other questions for staff?
Just double check. So the side yard setback, the gross number needs to be 25 feet, right? 10 feet and 15. Is that what I'm seeing up here on their site plan?
You need an RSF2 with the zoning district.
Correct. If I'm looking at the site plan that they provided, does that look like it's 10 foot on one side and 15 on the other for a total of 25?
Well, may I speak to that as well?
Yeah.
That comment. There were certain variances that were granted in the initial application. We're not asking to modify those variances. We want those to stand. The only request that we're making is to the elevations themselves, and to the extent that we can comply with the variances that were originally granted, or the town's requirements with regard to setbacks and those types of things, will apply to. We'll make sure that our development complies with either the variances that were granted or the minimum standards in the ordinance. We're not seeking additional variances. So I wanted to make sure that we're clear on that. There were some variances that were granted initially with regard to some of the lots. I think maybe some height and some other variances that were granted. But
Okay.
some of those we're not even going to need at this point, even though they've been granted. But we want to make sure that we don't tamper with the variances that were originally granted, just these elevations.
All the lots though on there, Larry, as you're reading, do have 10 on one side, 15 on the other. So there's ultimately a 25-foot separation between them.
2 does not, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Am I not seeing that?
Well,
2
2 is 10 and
10.
10. You're right. 2 is 10 and 10.
I'm just looking at this as an individual who's lived up the street and driven by this site for, I mean, Wayne, when did they start this thing? And I understand it's had some issues.
Up to 2016.
Okay, so it's been 6 years out there. I am sincerely concerned, looking at some of the lot widths and the no front load garages, that they may be backing themselves into a corner they haven't really thought through. My desire would be to make a motion and possibly strike that line. Can we do that? And does anybody have an opinion about it? I'm just looking out to get this thing done.
I don't
and
want
I
to see,
understand- I
I
don't
wouldn't
wanna-
want to see front load garages, and front load garages, again, make the house wider than if you do the style that they've suggested. So by allowing it, you're actually allowing them to build a wider house, which goes against your issue about
No.
the house being too wide.
No, I have no issue about the width of the house. I have just a general concern that they're going to find themselves limited to a very certain style. Just doing the math, I mean, I see some of the lots having a net width of 50 feet after you take off the 25 feet of setbacks. It's not like I'm overly concerned that something's going to go on that we're going to disagree with. I just want to make sure they don't find themselves in don't have them come back here.
And we concur with that approach. Last thing we want to do is come back and
But you like seeing it.
suggest that even though we've imposed some standards here, we're not going to be able to meet them because of the actual width of the lot, those types of things, and still maintain good architectural controls and details. So it's probably of all of the things that we've listed in terms of architectural standards, probably the least significant, but probably needs the most flexibility depending on how we're going to structure some of these garages with the width of those lots.
Yeah.
So.
The most narrow lot at the front appears to be at least 60 feet. And actually probably wider than that. So,
Which lot is that, Chris?
lot one, I mean, you can look at the length of the property line out front, and you've got 60 foot plus a 25, 75 right along kind of the road. Well, that 60 foot is not as wide as the distance between the two setback lines for that lot. So that means that setback, or the width of that lot has to be in excess of 60 feet. Looks like 10 might be 60 feet.
Yeah. I was just kind of looking
9
down there
might
at
be
like
60.
lots 6, 7, and 8, that kind of,
And they're narrow up front, but they're wider in the back.
Isn't lot 6 is the lot which is currently got construction going on, I believe.
Yeah,
And that
you're right.
just jogged my thinking too. I'm not sure that's a side entry garage. I think it may be a front load garage. You know, Mr. Andrioli?
I mean, I think they've A, done the math. They've B, told us that they will not come back and ask for any side yard variances. So if Mr. Wolf was here, he could enter that into his fancy little spreadsheet that he keeps, which I applaud him for if he's listening. So, I mean, I think we've thrown it, I mean, it's on them ultimately to set their standards and to follow them.
okay.
Any other questions, comments? I'd make one more comment, and that is that if we have a recommendation, a motion to recommend this, that we add the provision to have the staff recommendation included in the motion, which the developer would need to approve the building plans prior to submitting for the permit. With that, is there a motion?
Sure. I move that docket number 2022-19-M, petition for modification to 2017-11-DSV Development Standards Variance to remove the associated elevations from the approved conditions in the urban single-family residential zoning district be approved based on the findings of fact and as presented with staff's recommendation that the developer submit a letter that the plans and elevations have been reviewed and approved in accordance with these commitments prior to being submitted for a building permit.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. McKell. Was that right?
No, that was Mr.
You and
Jones.
Mr. Jones. That was Mr.
Mr.
Jones. Thank you, Mr. Jones. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Good luck with your work. And who's back at the virtual box back there? That's
Who's
not,
your IT guy today?
Be John.
who is it?
John Emery.
John, okay. John, if there are people that are back there online, would you stand up and wave or do something? I can only see the top of your head, so.
And if there's anybody that wants to be recognized. for the
Yes,
record.
exactly. Next item on the agenda is docket number 2022. This is new business, by the way, 2022-21-DSV, Zionsville Presbyterian Church Food Pantry, 4775 West 116th Street, Zionsville, Indiana. Petition for a development standard variance to provide for a new commercial building which deviates from the architectural design requirement and the deviates from the landscape requirement of the urban Michigan overlay zone for property zoned urban office business zoning district B0. I will also ask Mr. Jones to take over. I will recuse myself from this petition. So I will let Mr. Jones handle from this point on.
All right. Thank you very much. I guess what our first is we have the presenter available. Please introduce yourself and address.
My name is Chris Hinkle. I work at Red Barn Engineering. We're the site engineers for the project 115 Roundup Trail in Fishers. I also have with me Eileen Davis representing Zionsville Presbyterian Church and Mike Boyle with Boyle Construction Management representing the contractor. The proposed project is for a new food pantry located on the existing Zionsville Presbyterian Church campus. That's a 5,600 square foot building. It's going to be located just to the parking lot to the southeast of the existing building. The food pantry will be used as it is today. Today, it's currently located in the existing facility. This will just be a new freestanding building. The way that the food pantry is kind of set up is that food is delivered to the building. And then people come and actually get the food from the building. It's provided to patrons that way. There's no food preparation on site, no kitchen located in the building. They have approximately 10 volunteers at the busiest times to be working there. The building itself will be a brick building with asphalt shingles. And then we have two particular variances that we're here for. You want me to go into that, or you want me to let staff take over?
Sure, go ahead. And
The first development standards variance that we're looking for deals with the architectural requirements of the building. We are within the urban Michigan road overlay requirements district. So the requirements for architectural design need to be consistent with colonial, federal, Victorian, or Greek revival periods. The proposed building materials that we're looking at using, instead of going that route, we've basically tried to match everything to the existing facility that's out there. So what we're presenting will be a building that will be more of an extension of the existing facility instead of something that looks completely different. Therefore, with it looking the same, it'll be more of a campus type feel. And then the second variance that we're looking for deals with landscaping requirements within this Michigan Road Overlay District. Again, because of the location of the proposed building, we're about 500 feet off Michigan Road. When that original building was constructed, the the buffering along Michigan Road met the initial requirements. Since then, things have changed. But because we're so far away from Michigan Road, it really doesn't really connect anything to the building. And therefore, we've gone ahead and just done plantings around the building that do meet the requirements for what we need to do for foundation plantings and things on site. But our variance would be for the additional buffering along Michigan Road, just due to the distance that it is from the actual proposed building.
Okay. Do we have anybody else here interested in speaking either for or against the project? Or anybody online? Oh. Do we have a staff report?
Just for the record, I was made aware that Keith Mundrick and Sally Columbus want to be recognized. Side note there, as far as the staff report for this petition, summarizing, they did get previous planning commission approval for their development plan, obviously contingent on USDA's approval for you. Overlay district, which requires the architecture meet the Zionsville theme. That's not, but needs to be architecture of the existing building. Also, with a 30-foot green belt required along 421. It's the width is mostly met. It's just there's no plantings. Staff is in favor of both of those requests, and I am happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. And I would say that at the plan commission meeting, it met with unanimous support. So is there any more discussion amongst the?
No, I mean, I think, the church obviously being there before some of these overlay standards were in place is the reason for some of these requests for modification. I think they've done a great job with the architecture of matching the existing church. So thank you for doing that. I mean, could have deviated in numerous ways, whether that be with or against the current overlay standards. But I think that trying to get that to feel like it belongs on the campus was the right move.
Do we have a motion?
Move the docket number 2022-21-DSV Development Standards Variance to deviate from the architectural design guidelines of the property located at 4775 West 116th Street, Zionsville, in the Urban Michigan Road Overlay Zone for property zoned Urban Office Business Zoning District B-O, be approved as filed based on the findings of fact and substantial compliance with the submitted site plans and concepts.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
And then the second half of that is I move that docket number 2022-21-DSV Development Standards Variance to deviate from the landscaping requirements to reduce the 30-foot wide landscape green belt to 0 at the property located at 4775 West 116th Street, Zionsville, in the Urban Michigan Road Overlay Zone for property zoned Urban Office Business Zoning District B-O, be approved as filed based on the findings of fact and substantial compliance with the submitted site plans and concepts.
Do you have a second? Second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same side. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Steve.
You yell at Steve when you step out, please. Thank you.
I'm going to move up there because my microphone is not working.
Didn't harass them. I didn't have to use the button to call the police. Made it through safe and sound.
I guess you don't get to sign that, she just pass them down.
These are both on the one just passed.
Yeah.
The next item on the agenda is 2022-22 DSV South Village Station 10615 Zionsville Road, Zionsville, Indiana. Petition for development standard variance to make modifications to an existing pole sign. Is there a representative for that here? And if you'd give your name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Joshua Robertson. I'm an attorney with Cohen, Gerlich and Glazier at 8888 Keystone Crossing, Suite 800, Indianapolis 46240. I'm here on behalf of the petitioner, South Village Station LLC, for the property at 10615 Zionsville Road. This petition concerns an existing pole sign that's been in place for quite a long time at the property. It has two tenant signs on it and a metal canopy at the top. And the owner desires to change the sign, but the types of changes that are desired go beyond mere modifications under the standards. And then that kind of puts them into the category of needing to meet current regulations for a new sign, which are quite restrictive and don't quite work with the property for different reasons. So there's a schematic that was submitted with the petition that shows the existing sign and then how the new proposed changes would fit and how those would look. The new sign would utilize the existing pole that's in place. Nothing would be moved. But in fact, the overall height of the sign would be reduced from 19 feet down to 15 feet. So we're bringing it lower. Also, it would reduce the width of the sign from the existing 9 feet down to 8 feet. They would also remove the sort of metal canopy top that's on the existing sign. And then for the existing, or in place of the signage, a new internally illuminated sign box would be put in place that would look much nicer than the existing sort of flat, non-illuminated signs. Again, this would all take place in the same location on the same pole. The first variance that would be required would be current regulations require the name of the center to be included on the sign. The name of the shopping center is not on the existing sign, and given that we are reducing the square footage of signage, we're asking that we not be required to include the name of the center on the sign, because that would sort of take away from signage for the tenants. Also, the next variance that is sought is regarding the setback requirement. The current setback regulations require 10 feet from the right of way, and the existing sign is 1 foot from the right of way. But again, it's existed in that location for a very long time and doesn't propose any challenges for visibility or other problems. Next is regarding the max height that's allowed at the 10-foot setback is 6 feet. And again, our sign, the existing sign that's in place is 19 feet, and we're taking that down to 15 feet. So we would ask for a variance to be able to go over that 6 foot height limitation. Not finally, but the second to last request is that current standards require, I believe, 64 square foot of landscaping around a new sign. There is no landscaping around the existing sign, and in fact, the sign is sort of in between two parking spaces, and adding this landscaping would take away parking. It would kind of go in, it would interfere with the flow of traffic and parking in the lot, and so it would not work very well. And then finally, current regulations require a sign to be added, sort of describing the landscaping materials. This kind of ties in with the previous issue. There is no landscaping, and we're asking that there not be any, and so we would ask for a variance from that requirement as well. think that just about covers everything for this pretty straightforward request, but I'm happy to address any questions.
So you have provided us with 2 drawings as Exhibit 4. Both of them have different height measurements on them. This one says the top of the sign is 15 foot. This one says the top of the sign is 18 foot.
It would be, it's 15 foot. The existing sign is 19 feet tall and the new sign would be 15 feet.
Okay, so then we are to disregard the dimensions on this drawing. You are absolutely able to come up here and look at it. So here you say 15 at the top of the sign, and here your drawing says 18 at the top of the new sign. No, the old cabinet's dimensions are in red, the new cabinet's dimensions are in black.
Yeah, I believe that this one is less clear. The one that shows just the dimensions of the new sign is accurate.
Right.
Yes, thank you.
Yep, just wanted to clarify.
They're a month different too.
Mhm.
It's 210, that's 320. or 310.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Thank you. Are there anyone here who wishes to speak for or against this request? Seeing none, do we have staff? Oh, you've moved. Do we have
Yes,
staff
I think
report,
my mic's
please?
working now too. The Petitioner did a good job summarizing, and I can go in much detail as you want, but I think we get the big picture here is that it's a legal non-conforming sign, which you are permitted to do maintenance on. Once you change out the cabinet, change the size, the height, then it has to come into conformance with our current standards, which is the reason that they're here tonight. Obviously, staff thinks that this will be improvement to what is currently there and is in favor of all the variance requests before you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff?
So just to confirm, because we see a lot of this in signage, it's the reason you see a lot of lots that are vacant except for the sign, is that once we change the cabinet, all of it is subject to being brought up to current code.
Correct.
Okay. So they have no kind of grandfather for anything. This is substantially different than any other sign that we've got going on in Zionsville, correct?
I'm happy to answer that question in terms of certainly in my 10 years of being on staff here, we've approved just a handful of integrated center signs. The CVS sign, for example, at the Ford Center, that's a permit that was issued. That integrated center signs are 15 feet tall at maximum and letting us pick up a few additional feet with additional setbacks. So the proposal in front of you this evening is generally in conformance with size and square footage, but it's the other accoutrements that come with an integrated center sign, such as the name, landscaping, hence the variances. But I would say the other integrated center sign that we've worked on recently is at the village, Boone Village, and I mean that's a different style of sign altogether.
And then I'm struggling to understand, what is the core concern with the landscaping? Why is that so impossible?
Given the location, the sign is in the parking lot, surrounded by asphalt, with a parking space immediately adjacent to it on either side. And the square footage of landscaping that would be required would push into those parking spaces and also, I believe, into the sort of parking lot right of way, if you will, where cars travel.
Any other questions for the petitioner?
I guess, like I said, I'm just struggling. The landscaping would protect the base of it. There's only one parking space adjoining to it. If the sign, if the picture is correct, it's basically sitting in what has been painted out to be an island already.
Yeah, I think that's right, Larry. I've driven by it many times, but I paid attention this time. And yeah, I don't believe that's a parking space. It's the corner spot. It's the sign parking place, I guess, but not a car parking place.
Yeah, there is a parking space. I don't know the
Yeah,
direction. but-
immediately adjacent to it.
It's south.
Right, and then the entrance right of way is on the other side. You see there's one photo with a car pulling into the lot.
How far does the town's right of way come off of Zionsville Road to your property?
I mean, if his sign is 1 foot off the right of way, I'd say that it comes to the edge of that pavement. And then if you drew a line down from the sign up above straight down, you'd be 1 foot onto the pavement.
Mr. Lake's correct. We spent substantial amount of time reviewing this, especially as the town itself went into this area and purchased additional right of way
Oh, yeah.
to actually move the right of way a little bit. And you have working knowledge of that as well.
It's 1 foot from the proposed right of way.
And so basically the height and size of the sign complies with our current integrated standard rules and regs. Is that what I heard? The 15-foot height and the 64 feet of signage?
The square footage is fine. It's the height.
The height would be fine if it were further back from the right of way,
right.
correct?
Correct. And also the pole signs are not permitted in this zoning district.
So you'd have to have panels all the way down to the ground.
Huh?
Panels all the way down to the ground.
Yeah. And of course, you're talking to the king of grandfathering anything and everything. So I'm hoping nobody I know downtown is watching me right now.
I'm a downtown resident as well, so.
Yeah, well, I have a less of a concern with it being a pole sign. They're bringing it down to the height and the sign that would be traditionally approved, just given the nonconformity with the setbacks. The landscaping issue would just, it's small potatoes, but it kind of protects the base of it and kind of makes it look not so stark. I guess that's my. But I understand the math of if it's existing.
I
Try to
agree.
work
It
with
is. It's an ugly sign now. It's a less than pleasant looking sign. It will look better, certainly, with the improvements. The landscaping would be helpful, although if there were a car parked next to it, you wouldn't see it coming from the south. So
And truly, the intent of the owner is twofold. I mean, number one, the existing sign just is not great looking, so they would like to improve the aesthetics of the sign for the town, and then also for their tenants, give their tenants some better signage. It's more modern and nice looking, rather than just continuing to leave things as they are and not have to make any changes.
any other questions? Any more discussion? Anyone wish to take on the motion that has
Sure, I'll do them.
6 elements to
All
it?
right. I move the docket number 2022-22-DSV Development Standards Variance for the property located at 10615 Zionsville Road to allow for a pole sign within the Urban General Business Zoning District, B2, be approved as presented be approved as presented, yes, or be approved as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes.
I move the docket number 2022-22-DSV Development Standards Variance for the property located at 10615 Zionsville Road to not have the integrated center name located on the pole sign within the Urban General Business Zoning District B2 be approved as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
I move the docket 2022-22-DSV Development Standard Variance for the property located at 10615 Zionsville Road to be set back 1 foot from the proposed right-of-way within the Urban General Business Zoning District B2 be approved as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
I move the docket number 2022-22-DSV Development Standard Variance for the property located at 10615 Zionsville Road for the pole sign being 15 feet in height within the Urban General Business Zoning District B2 be approved as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Okay. I move the docket 2022-22-DSV Development Standards Variance for the property located at 10615 Zionsville Road for the pole sign not providing the associated landscaping within the Urban General Business Zoning District B2 be approved as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. And second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Did it get approved?
Got one more.
Yes, yes.
I move the docket 2022-22-DSV Development Standards Variance for the property located at 10615 Zionsville Road for the pole sign not providing the landscape, vegetation, or materials within the Urban General Business Zoning District B2 be approved as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. If you want to go get a drink of water now, Larry, you're welcome to do that. Next item on the agenda is docket number 2022-23-DSV. A. Collins at 170 North Maple Street, Zionsville. Petition for a development standard variance to provide for a detached accessory building which deviates from the aggregate side yard setbacks in the urban village residential zoning district, RV. Can you give us your name and address, please?
Yes, hello, my name is Bridget Collins Corti and I live at 160 North Maple Street. I am representing my family for the property at 170 North Maple Street, immediately next door to my property. We are requesting a variance of development standards for the aggregate side yard setback. We're requesting that the required 15 feet be reduced to 4 feet. And this is in an effort to, well, essentially we are rebuilding a 2-car garage that's over 40 years old. We're hoping that it could be better placed on the property. We're still adhering to the 5 feet that's required from the north property line. And we believe that this maximizes and improves the use of the property by best situating the garage to allow for a continuous area of landscaping and open yard in what is relatively an already smaller sized lot. Let's see. This also enables garage access to be much easier, where the current garage layout has us accessing the garage from Maple Street. And we will be closing off that access on the side of the house, essentially just putting a fence in, putting some landscaping in, and the new access will be off of the back of the house, off of the alley, which is right behind the property. Moving the garage over just that 4 feet will enable us to position the cars better, getting in and out of the garage, and provides for less obstruction to the, or I shouldn't say obstruction, less interference with the 3 accessory structures that are immediately behind the property. They seem to be right along the property line of the north property. So this would allow us to get in and out of the garage more effectively. We also believe that the positioning is more evenly spaced. I think the proposed layout is more sensitive to the entire area on Maple and Main Street. It more evenly spaces accessory and primary structures. And this allows for more open greenery, landscaping, and more light, both from north, south, east, west directions.
Thank you, Ms. Curdy.
Thank you.
Any questions for the petitioner?
So the driveway, the gravel drive on the north side of the house, will you then be removing that?
The current, I included as exhibit 3 to my packet, the current driveway. And so this is at the, east side of the property off of Maple Street. There's a current extensive gravel driveway. Essentially the entire yard is gravel. So we will be landscaping over the gravel drive, putting a fence, backyard fence on the side of the property so that it's our yard. It will actually be a yard area instead of just entirely gravel. So this will no longer be used as access at all to the garage. The garage will be entirely accessed by car via the alley behind the property.
So then eventually the curb cut off of Maple then could go away as well?
Yes. However, just as a resident of Maple Street, I do know that when there's snow plows, the only way for children and mothers with strollers to get off down onto the street is usually they kind of take a shortcut off of that. I just thought I'd add that as a resident myself.
So you'd want to keep the curb cut, the driveway cut?
We have no intention of augmenting that at all. We won't be using it as a driveway for garage access at all. I think it just enables children and people to kind of get off onto the street. There's often a pile up at the end of Maple of snow and sleet in the winter.
Any other questions? Thank you. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak for or against this petition? Seeing none, could we have a staff report?
Yes, well, the petitioner did a good job presenting the request. Just a little background, there's an existing garage that they're wishing to demolish and then relocate the garage to the other side of the property. With that, the aggregates, they're meeting the side setback of 5 feet with the new garage. However, based on the existing house, the house is 6 feet from the property line, which would get the aggregate at 11 feet. And based on petitioner's plan to maximize their backyard, I think staff is in favor of this request and happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions for staff?
So like I said, currently the placement of the driveway or the gravel driveway hard to the property lot line isn't allowed, correct? Even in the village?
Say that again,
The proximity of the edge of even with the gravel driveway, it appears that it runs from the house to the property line.
yeah, so it doesn't meet you're saying it doesn't meet the 5 foot.
It wouldn't meet its
setback,
current. And my concern is why I keep bringing up the curb cut. Not that I ever think it'll happen, but down the line, somebody else buys this house and they've got a curb cut in front of it, and it's a great place just to, pull a car up in the front yard. Put it up on blocks, old school Zionsville, not the new Zionsville. So do we? I don't know. I'm just looking at something 20 years down the road when there's still a driveway cut coming off of Maple going into a front lawn.
I would never give it up if I was a homeowner.
You would what?
I would never give it up if I was the homeowner.
Well, I understand. I know the math. Yes.
It does create one more parking space. And I drive down Maple fairly often. There are times when there's not a place to park on Maple.
But I guess even if the curb cut stays, the driveway cut stays, putting in a driveway, once this one is removed, which it is being removed, the gravel getting removed.
Yes, and it will be entirely landscaped over, and there will be a privacy fence, basically, with landscaping around it.
Okay. So just for the occasional car up on blocks, it shouldn't really have anything going on up there. So sorry.
All right. No one online, John? Okay, thank you. All right. If there's no further questions of staff, any further discussion on the board? If not, is there a motion on this petition?
I move the docket number 2022-23- DSV Development Standards Variance to provide for a deviation from the aggregate side yard setback of 11 feet for the construction of a detached two-car garage at 170 North Maple Street, Zionsville, in the Urban Residential Village Zoning District RV, be approved as filed based upon the findings of fact and substantial compliance with the submitted site plans and concepts.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And that second was
Second was Mr.
Patel.
Piquel.
Thank you for your time.
It sounds alive. Just a note here, the second was made by Mr. Patel, not Mr. Jones. Next on the agenda is docket number 2022-24-DSB Auto Potenza 7845 South Indianapolis Road, Zionsville, Indiana. Petition for development standard variance for the reduction of the required amount of off-street parking in the rural light industrial zone district I-1. Is the representative here?
Yes, Michael Grove with Architectural Design Group and Triad Associates.
Could you walk us through the petition that you have filed?
Yes. As you can see, we're going to build a 3,600 square foot auto repair facility nestled in the corner of this property. This is a unique property because it's almost 600 feet long. It's kind of shaped like a giant arrow as it comes down where Indianapolis Road crosses under 65. And that 3,600 square foot building has a location to work on like 5 cars. That's it. Typically, these people come, drop off the car, pick it up. So the need for any kind of extra parking beyond what's required and what we've made account for at this time, we have basically a couple extra spaces for what we've shown. This, I think, fell into, when they developed this zoning, they were really looking at dealerships and they lumped this in together. We don't have the need like a dealership for a large expanse of cars or anything. So what we're looking for is a variance to not have to follow the final addition, which is 1,000, one car for every 1,000 square feet of the entire property on top of the other required parking. The other thing is that in doing this, if you look at our overall site, we'd be removing a lot of trees just to meet that requirement. Plus, there's the total infrastructure and grading and for this property as it moves down toward the pointed area, where we're going to have a detention area also take up space. So, I mean, we don't need the parking, so that's why we're asking for the variance to not have to do that. Plus, we don't want to go out and remove all the trees that we don't need to remove. We don't have to.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? What's I think, the final number of parking spaces that you are asking for?
34.
34.
And we're required to have 33.
And is the existing building there now functioning as a repair site? No.
No, it's just it is being repaired. It's getting some new siding and a roof, but it won't become part of this until the other building is up, because it basically it's just serving as a couple offices. Once the other building is built, it's going to serve as like a couple offices for like people just there, because we don't really have a lot of space in the other building. We have one office where you come in for reception, and then there's a restroom and a little waiting area, and the rest of it's just the repair area. So that's set aside for the owner to have an office just there and keep it in the house for that.
Any other questions for the petitioner? No one online, John? Thank you. Okay. If there are none, could we have a staff report, please? I'm sorry, no one here to speak for or against this petition. The audience is getting a little thin, so I assume not. Could we have staff report, please?
Yes, so as the petitioner touched on, they're requesting a reduction in the amount of off-street parking. In this use, they lump auto sales, auto repair together, and I would assume that that is where the significant amount of parking comes into play. Staff is in favor of the reduction in the parking, and just for clarification, they'll go on to plan commission and have to get development plan approval from the plan commission. And happy to answer any other questions.
How many cars are on site now? I was there today, so I saw a number. I thought maybe there was already some operation going on.
No, well, there's been some construction going on there as far as working on that roof or trying to put the new siding on. So some of that may have been that. Also, the owner has brought over, I think, 3 or 4 cars from his other facility on the east side while they were doing some work around on the area around that building, like a repave or something. So there's a temporary, and then once that's done, they're going back anyway.
Thank you.
So if I can interject, I believe this was noticed by first class mail. So do we still need a motion to approve?
Thank you.
Okay, so if we could, I'll make a motion to approve first class mail as a notice for this petition.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lake and Mr.
Jones.
Jones. Yes, and just to further it, due to COVID, we have allowed notification by first class mail rather than certified mail, which is required by our rules. So we will exempt that for this evening's. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That was a little deviation there. So any other questions, comments? Is there a motion then on docket number 2022-24-DSV?
I move that docket number 2022-24-DSV Development Standards Variance to provide for the reduction of the required amount of off-street parking at 7845 South Indianapolis Road, Zionsville, in the Rural Light Industrial Zoning District I-1 be approved as filed based upon the findings of fact and substantial compliance with the submitted site plans and concepts.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is approved.
You.
The next and final item on the agenda is docket number 2022-25-DSV Bright Signs Marketing, 6200 Technology Center Drive, Zionsville, Indiana. Petition for development standard variance to provide for a billboard sign which, one, deviates from the required maximum size, and two, deviates from the required maximum height in the rural light industrial zoning district I-1. And if you would state your name and address, please, for the record.
Aaron Keebler, I'm owner of Bright Signs Marketing in Fort Wayne. Address is 2410 West Jefferson Boulevard, Fort Wayne, Indiana, 46802.
You want to tell us about this project you're proposing and requesting a variance for?
Yes, the property at 6200 Technology Court Drive, Zionsville, Indiana, 46077. The backside of the property runs against I-465. And the owner of the property would like to construct a billboard from ground up on the backside of this property, double-sided to face both east and westbound traffic. The billboard would be a digital billboard meant for public advertising. And again, it would be a whole new construction on that site.
Any questions for the petitioner's representative?
Do you think you could have found a more dangerous location to put this thing? I mean, this one's horrible. I think if you moved it maybe a little bit, farther southwest around the curve to get to the real part where everybody's trying to jog between getting around the curve and getting onto 865 north, as well as, the westbound traffic looking across, you've got people swapping around there, and I only speak of it because I drive it twice a day, every single day.
When it always backs up there too.
But it backs up
So you're
and
looking over at the sign and not seeing the person in front of you stop.
yeah, exactly. I don't know. I mean, I think there is a worse location. They could have moved it maybe a little farther around the curve, but finally these things are an eyesore. I know you put the little blip in there about they put out some sort of public message every so often, but they are not only distracting, some of them have video on them, which is even more distracting. And then at night, you're trying to work your way down the highway in various weather conditions, and off to one side of you, you've got even a larger, brighter item that's taking your attention away from the road, as well as disrupting your what's it when your eyes are dilating back and forth between light and dark? What's that? That there's a term for it though.
Got me.
I think it's a clarity or something like that, visual. I don't know. Anyways,
I'm not sure.
Other than that, I don't have much opinion about this.
And to kind of touch on the technology of our product, this would be not our first billboard we've done, not our first variance for billboard. And so I completely understand where you're standing with it. Now, the technology behind the product too, there's a photo cell on both sides of the board that actually works with how much sunlight is being put out. So if it were to be, when it goes dark, the screen is dark, it dims down low. It's not, there are billboards out there and you are able to control brightness. They've actually kind of gone past that so that they comply better with zoning, so that the billboard will dim when it's dark, when it rains, or whenever it needs to, it dims and then would go back up, and it never would go past 65% brightness. There's no use in the electrical bill for the customer, and it doesn't do much difference for the billboard.
Is it video capable?
Capable, yes, it is. Yes, all digital billboards are video capable.
You're aware that there are some procedural considerations that this board must take into account. the last of which is a strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in an unnecessary hardship in the use of this property. I did see that you have completed that. Although I failed to see the hardship that would be caused if it were denied in those findings of fact. It basically says, well, there are other billboards out there, and so if we did not approve this, we have caused an unnecessary hardship to the property owner. In fact, as Mr. Jones pointed out, this is on the curve. Once you get past the curve, you'll see billboard after billboard, quite a few of them. Some are digital, some are just the traditional sign. It is past the curve. There are none in that curve. And the traffic does back up there, I think, at almost every evening in rush hour. But I don't see anything else in here that depicts a hardship.
Now, depending on, being in the sign industry, it's interesting that, I'm biased because I'm in the sign industry, but I see tons of signs. Every time I'm driving, I'm looking at the signs. I see sign. And just on, for instance, this curve here, there is no billboard right in this area. But on many areas, traveling around Indy and in Fort Wayne, where I'm located, there are. And it's not necessarily a big, it's not drastically changing my attention. And with that being said too, there's plenty of signs on this curve for traffic to see and to be seen on the building and around on all the buildings. So this would just be an additional sign to those signages.
That is somewhat of an oasis there, or a desert, I should say. There are not a lot in that vicinity. There are some, but not a lot. And I don't know how distracting they are. I don't pay attention much to signs unless I'm looking for food or gas or something like that. But again, that doesn't obviate the fact that I still don't see the hardship there.
Well, I think a sign on a curve is one thing. A sign on a curve where you're going from 3 lanes to 2 lanes, people in the left lane don't realize they can't be in the left lane and go east, so they got to get over. Traffic is stopping there because it's backing up from Michigan Road at the end of the day. You've got increased hazards on that specific turn. And then you're adding something else that could be seen as a hazard. So I would almost argue that not only is there not a hardship, which there under no circumstances is there any hardship. I would almost state that it is likely injurious to the public health to have it in that location as well. So it may not meet 2 of the 3.
Do we have anything from, does NDOT prohibit these on curves?
I'm not sure that NDOT, this is an interstate highway, so I'm not sure who controls that. But
NDOT controls that.
Okay.
So, I mean, is there any prohibition currently from NDOT that would stop someone from putting a billboard on a curve?
That might be a question best for the sign contractor.
Not that I'm aware of, but NDOT is our next step after getting this passed. Would be our next step.
So you can't talk to NDOT until this gets passed?
They are very difficult to work with. They do not want to talk until this is passed.
I find that hard to believe, but I would be willing to go with a continuance to find out what NDOT says on that curve specifically.
Yeah. Any other questions from the petitioner? Anyone here to remonstrate for or against this petition? All right, you can come up and address with your name and address, please.
My name is Ron Pinecki. I am a business owner actually at 6300 Technology Center Drive. So I own the facility immediately adjacent to it and probably the center point or centerpiece of that executive park. The facility that I own is called Wellbridge Surgical. It's a brand new surgery center. It was built fourth quarter last year or completed fourth quarter last year. I'm also a Zionsville resident. Received notice that this was being brought before the board a few days ago and just wanted to have an opportunity to speak on it. We're a transparently bundled transparent pricing surgery center, second one in the country, in fact, that's competing against current hospital systems, with Indiana being the fourth highest cost of healthcare in the country. And one of the reasons why we purchased that location was obviously for visibility, as well as the green space. Anybody that's driven past it knows it's kind of a beautiful area right there on the northwest corner. There's a nice retention pond that's got riprap lined all the way around it, and it's green space with a bunch of evergreens that have been planted there, and there's picnic tables and whatnot in front. We firmly believe one of five, or actually there's 5 points I'd like to bring up. One is the aesthetic issue, which I alluded to, and how this signage would affect that in a negative fashion. The second thing is a property value. We paid a fair price for a property that sat vacant, which was the old Harrison College, and developed it into a functional business that's bringing in surgical care patients that are actually coming in from even out of state. The third thing is visibility. The sign that's being proposed, I think, is 14 feet by 48 feet at a 40-foot elevation. It's going to obviously impair visibility of our building from both directions. The fourth thing is an eyesore. It's going to be light pollution, we believe, in the evening times, early in the morning, late at night. And then the fifth point was we have no control, and we should not, as non-owner of the sign, have any control over advertisement that's done on that billboard. So effectively, direct competitors could advertise within 150 yards of our facility, which we actually share a parking lot with 6200. So there's a shared communal parking lot that joins the two facilities areas. If you look on the overhead view, we share that executive park with Northwest Radiology, the Cancer Care Group, and like I said, we're the first surgery center actually that has been built in Zionsville. Most of the rest around the city are either in Fishers or Carmel. So we've committed to the community. I live in the community, and we would just like that to be taken under consideration as you decide whether or not this is not only a public safety issue, but also a net detriment to the property values and kind of what we consider a white collar executive park in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Wayne, is this still under a TIF district?
This isn't a Boone County adopted TIF district, correct?
It's still a TIF district.
Correct.
Nope. Funds generated from there actually benefit the town, right?
They benefit Boone County.
Don't we receive some money for the town hall from that TIF?
I don't know if it comes directly from that TIF, but yes, for a period of 5 years, starting in 2017, the town did receive a dollar amount from Boone County.
Okay. All right.
Which would be done now.
Okay.
It's 5 years.
All right. I just wanted to, if it is in a TIF, that is a.
It is a TIF.
Okay. All right.
Is that TIF still active?
It's a Boone County created TIF. Not an expert on it, but I believe it's nearing.
I think it's got to be almost done.
Close,
Yeah.
if not. Yeah. Okay.
It is. Okay. Anyone else?
You want a
And could
motion?
we have-
Or what? You want a motion?
Yeah, we're gonna have heard the staff report.
Oh, shoot, my bad.
He's ready to get out of here.
Could we have a staff report?
Yes, so we traditionally don't see a whole lot of there's been a few, but historically, staff has not historically been in favor of these type of variance requests. They do add some benefit to the community, possibly depending on the message, but staff feels that that does not outweigh the ordinance requirements. So staff has recommended denial of the petition, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? From staff perspective, this is a matter of what the value that they bring is not offset. Does not offset the distraction and the other elements of a billboard type sign that that brings to the community as well.
Correct. And obviously just not meeting the sign requirements. I think 35 feet is the maximum height and 150 square feet is the maximum size, and it well exceeds those requirements in that zoning district.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Is there a motion that someone would like to put forth?
Sure. I move the docket 2022-25-DSV Development Standards Variance for the property located at 6200 Technology Center Drive to allow for a billboard sign which deviates from the required maximum size to the 672 square foot within the rural light industrial zoning district. I-1 be denied.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. You'd like to continue, Mr. Jones?
Sure. I move the docket 2022-25-DSV Development Standards Variance for the property located at 6200 Technology Center Drive to allow for a billboard sign which deviates from the height to 40 feet within the rural light industrial zoning district. I-1 be denied.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is passed. The petition is denied. That brings us to the end. There will, the negative findings of facts for that petition will be presented at the June meeting for signatures at that time. Is there anything else that the board needs to discuss? Hearing none, move to adjourn.
Second.
So moved.
And we move.
All right.
What? What?
But is Mr. Lake injured as well?
I think I tore my MCL
What'd you
over the
do?
weekend.
Yeah, he tore his.
Yeah.
What were you doing?